Welcome, guys, to a Tuesday night, crazy Tuesday night. I didn't even see who's in the Super Bowl. Does anybody know right offhand? I didn't even watch anything yesterday.
Was that tonight?
No, it's I think it's in 2 weeks. But didn't they do the playoffs yesterday or something?
Yeah, Yay Sports. I'm not a.
Yeah.
I'm a state grad, so we don't watch sports because you can only be disappointed so many times in life. So.
True.
That's true.
Oh, Lord have mercy. I've always rooted for Wake Forest, just because we're in Winston-Salem, and I went to Clemson, but it's like I said, Wake Forest sports is disappointing as well. So, but anyway, welcome. We're going to talk about integrated pest management. Can all of y'all see the screen entitled Integrated Pest Management?
Yes.
All right, good deal. And if you guys have any questions, you can pop it up in the chat box, or you can just ask, since you got the microphone. And I did just turn. Where's everybody at?
You did eat my food.
There we are. So cool deal. This is a fun topic. I love talking about integrated pest management. IPMs. Is anybody here actively spraying turf, spraying lawns every single day as a part of their business, or strictly just lawn care? Or do you primarily use it in conjunction with like landscape maintenance?
Landscape maintenance.
Okay, cool. The best business in the world to be in. So I love what we do, and I love actually designing a fertility program and marketing that, and actually getting out there and doing that for our customers. And so when we start talking about integrated pest management, there are several things that we can actually do to possibly maybe not have to spray a pesticide in certain situations. So I recognize some of the names, but I think some of you guys, this is probably your first time taking the course or taking a class with me on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, it's my first time.
Yep,
Okay.
it's mine too.
Well, thank you guys, and hope you enjoy it. And I hope it's not too late. We found out that 7 to 8 hour usually works out best for a lot of people. But when it comes to integrated pest management, the first thing we've got to do is identify the pest. And can someone tell me the number one reason we have a pesticide failure when we make an application? What would be the number one reasons that pesticide application does not work?
Wrong product for the right bug, or vice versa.
Yes. We got to know which bug it is first. Misidentification of the pest is the number one reason we have a pesticide failure. The second one would be that we are using the incorrect amount. But we got to first identify what the bug or the pest is. And when we start talking about pest is any destructive or troublesome insect, animal, weed, microorganism, or pathogen that we may come across. Now, there are times that a pest may be a welcomed guest. In one situation, that pest is bad news. In other situations, it might be something that we really, really love. And I was just talking about football, because can anybody tell me one plant that is a pest in one situation, but is the most prettiest thing ever when we need it to be?
Bradford pears.
Yeah, I mean they are very beautiful when they are blooming. That is like the purest white bloom I think you can see.
Bermuda grass.
And why is that, Jonathan?
Because it's a pain in the ass to get out of.
It is a pain. If we have a fescue client and we've got some Bermuda grass creeping in over from the neighbor next door, it is a pest. Or when it's coming up through the cracks of the sidewalks or in the driveways or anywhere like that, we hate it. But when we play golf or when we play baseball, football, or anything outside on the athletic field, Bermuda grass is a welcomed guest. We love it. It's one of our favorite surfaces to play on these sports. So good job. Grass, turf grass. The Bermuda grass can be a pest and it can be a guest in those situations. There are 4 major types of pests that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about weeds, the disease agents or pathogens, the invertebrates, my favorite little creatures, and then the vertebrates. Now, this little guy down here in the right-hand corner, he can also be a welcomed guest or pest. You know, my daughter's, well, he passed away last week, but they had one of these little guys in a big old fish tank with the rolling wheel and everything. And they would take him out and play with him. And I swear he looks just like it. They called him a hamster or gerbil, whatever he was, but they would play with him all the time. But I swear if they were in the kitchen and they seen one run across the floor, they're going to freak out. But these little guys are a nuisance in the house. Not so much as these bugs right here, because I love these critters. And the animals without a backbone is our invertebrates. They have that exoskeleton, and they're very, very fascinating to actually study. But the pest differences that we're going to talk about is continuous, sporadic, and potential. Continuous means that it is nearly always present and requires regular control. Can anybody tell me a weed that is always continuous and we're always having to fight it and we're always having to take care of it here in the lawn care industry?
Crabgrass.
Crabgrass, exactly. We're getting ready to do those first applications for it. It is always here. And you know what? I don't want it to disappear. Why is that?
You probably like the revenue.
Exactly. It is a moneymaker. I mean, it is. And we just have a big, big problem with it here. And we have clients that cannot have any weeds in their yard. They have a zero tolerance for any type of weed. And we have clients that could care less that we actually do any spray. And actually, we have one client that would fire us if they saw us with a backpack sprayer on. And it is our wealthiest customer based on their street address. Now, they might be a little tight, but where they live and the size of that house and that address, we all have them, you know, wherever we're at in the state, we have these neighborhoods that make money. They will not allow us to spray Roundup, any type of 2,4-D or anything. It is zero pesticides on the property. Their fun on the weekends is getting out in the shrub beds and pulling weeds. That's their therapy. And they have a brick paver driveway, old school driveway, that all this grass and weeds comes up. And so about once every 3 weeks, we go in and we just buzz it down with a weed eater. But continuous weeds would be, like you said, the crabgrass. We like the money that it brings. Sporadic, it's migratory, silical, or other occasional pests that require control once in a while. Does anybody give me an example of a sporadic weed or a sporadic pest? Let's broaden the term. Well, any type of pest.
Beetles.
What was it?
Beetles.
Beetles? Yeah, that can happen. Yep.
Well, Japanese beetles, you know, they come in.
Yep.
Cyclical, you know.
Anybody here grow tomatoes? Anybody like growing tomatoes on their back porch or whatever when it gets that time of year, or has a garden and does a lot of tomatoes?
Mm-hmm.
You ever see the tomato hornworm? It can be sporadic. What's one thing that will control the number of tomato hornworms that we see in the summertime? Depends on whether we have a wet winter or not. These guys, when they're down in the ground, if we have a really wet winter, we're not going to see as many in the summer. Some of them are going to drown out. They're not going to be there. Potential, not pest under normal conditions, but can require control under certain circumstances. I'd probably say maybe brown patch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to hit that if we have a very hot summer that gives a lot of rain, or we have a customer that likes to take control of their irrigation system and play with it and water their grass at night. We do have the potential to produce the brown patch in our turf grass. And so what is the pesticide? It is any substance that is used to kill the pest or prevent or reduce the damage that it may cause. And there's just some pictures of the stuff that we can buy at the big box stores. And luckily our homeowners cannot get hold of the stuff that we do. But we do have some avid gardeners in our neighborhoods. My neighbor, for one, across the street, loves to take care of his yard. I mean, it's every single day. The dude just has the perfect stand of grass. And it's always good to kind of sit on the porch and watch him do that at times. And he's doing it all from the big box stores. But with our goals of pest management and some of the terms that we may use are these. When it comes to pest management, we want to prevent, suppress, or eradicate. Prevention is when we keep the problems from occurring. We're doing our pre-emergent crabgrass control. Suppression, we reduce the pest populations to acceptable levels. Now, there's the key word, acceptable levels. That's going to be different for every customer that we have. We have some customers, like I said, zero tolerance. They'll fire you for one little patch of clover you're done with. Others, they don't care. They do not care. One of the best customers we ever had. They eventually moved out of town, no longer needed our services, but had a beautiful stand of turf grass when they moved in, when they built the house. Builder laid sod and everything. It just looked good. They had an irrigation system. And we started mowing for them. We're like, do you want to be on the lawn care program? They're like, no, to be honest with you, we don't care. Eventually, Bermuda grass took it over. And they went from fescue lawn to Bermuda lawn because they're like, Eric, we don't care as long as it's green, gets mowed, we're fine and dandy. We don't need to spend all that money on a turf grass program. They just didn't care. Eradication, they eliminate the pest population. Now, when it comes to certain insects and certain other things, we may not want to eliminate the total pest population. Why is that?
Something else will move in sometimes.
Something else could move in, yeah. But what else leaves when all the bad bugs leave?
Oh, the good ones.
The good ones. The beneficials, they pack up and move out too. And so some terms that we'll know: selectivity, the mode of action is how the pesticide works. Selectivity is, whether it affects one organism or it targets multiple species. Systemic, some pesticides enter the tissues of the pest and then are transported within. Contact is only, spraying on top of the plant. It does not translocate within the plant or the pest. Residual activity is defective lifetime of different pesticides that varies from hours to weeks to months and years. Residual activity is a big thing. Some pesticides can be illegal just based on their residual activity. And then pesticide resistance is when the pest population is no longer controlled by the pesticide, and it's usually due to the elimination of susceptible individuals by repeated exposure. The types of pesticides that we may use here in the lawn care business would be a herbicide, definitely for our weeds, insecticides for our insects and related arthropods, definitely some fungicides. We may get into some pesticides for our nematodes. Definitely some defoliants we've used. We've used growth regulators and definitely pheromones when it comes to integrated pest management. But these are the chemicals that affect the behavior of other members of the same species. Growth regulator, perfect when actually pruning. You can actually prune some of these shrubs that have high, that grows super fast. You can prune them early spring when they get that flush of new growth on it. You can hit it with something like Atramac, and it's going to stunt the growth and actually, help you out, and by not having to prune them again a second time for the year. So what is IPM? I found two similar definitions out of two different dictionaries, but one is integrated pest management. It's the coordinated use of appropriated control tactics to reduce pest and their damage to an acceptable level. And there's that word again, acceptable level. And then it is the combination of appropriate pest control tactics into a single plan to reduce pest and their damage to an acceptable level. I went ahead and muted everybody's mic. So just whenever you have a question or anything, just unmute yourself and then ask. A little bit of background noise there, but the two definitions of it. And so components of IPM is grouped into 6 major steps. 1, identify the pest and understand its biology. Well, we got to understand it. We got to identify it correctly before we can understand the biology. You need to know the life cycles that it goes through. You have to monitor the pest to be managed. So yes, it takes site visits. It takes going to the property and seeing what's going on. 3, you got to determine if threshold levels of the pest populations have been reached. Only you or your customer can determine that. And then you must consider the various management choices and then implement the tactic or tactics that control the pest with the least harm to everything else. And then last but not least is record and evaluate your results. The best thing about these cell phones that we carry around now, it has the camera. You can take notes on them. That is the perfect way to record what's happening on your properties. And so overview of IPM, again, pest identification, monitoring or scouting. You got to look for it. You got to see what's going on. You have to take samples, try to estimate the populations, determine the economic or action thresholds to see if it's going to cause damage. Sometimes it may cost you more money to do the pesticide application versus of just kind of letting the pest do its natural thing and just kind of take over. If it's not going to kill the plant or it's not going to kill the turf grass, it may be just better to actually leave it. They do that more in agriculture, whether it's based on if it's going to have them have a better yield, they may do it, or if it's going to cost them more money than they could actually get out of the crop, they may not make the application. But we have different types of management options available for us. Cultural control is when we manage strategies that reduce the numbers of pests. Sanitation, removing food or water. Sometimes just removing the food, the pest will actually leave. Mechanical control, exclusion, biological control. I love talking about the wasp, the predatory wasp that are out there to actually take care of aphids. A lot of that is some cool stuff. Host resistance, using some biologically engineered plants or quarantine or regulatory control for pests covering a large area or endangering public health, and government agencies may have to take some action. And then last but not least is our chemical control. That's when we're using the pesticide. And that's always our last choice in an integrated pest management plan. Now, it's kind of hard to actually have a perfect stand of grass without having to use some type of pesticide. But out of these lists right here, what are some things that we can do or implement in the integrated pest management plan with, let's say, tall fescue? What's one way that we can reduce our Bermuda grass encroaching in on our tall fescue? And it would be mechanical control. What's one way that we can force that Bermuda grass out of a tall fescue lawn?
Cut it higher.
Cut it higher, 4 inches. Yeah, 4 inches is going to start choking out that Bermuda grass. What about the lawns that we have that are super nice, perfect, clean, but just before we showed up to that property, we've cut a customer's yard that really doesn't care, and they have some crabgrass in the yard. What do we need to do with our equipment before moving to the next site?
Clean it.
Clean it. Sanitize it. Exactly. Remove all of it out of it. Crabgrass can produce 2,000 seeds per square foot in a single season. That's a lot of seeds that we pick up on our mower decks, that we pick up on our shoes, our uniforms. When we're out there cutting, we get the grass and everything sticking to us. We're carrying those seeds around. So sanitation and mechanical control is a big thing in lawn care. Here is the our injury levels, whether it's, our threshold or the economic injury level. We got with our number of pests on the left-hand side over time, and our pest population starts growing over time. Once it reaches that economic threshold, that's when we need to treat it. We need to treat it before it reaches the economic injury level. Once it reaches the EIL, we don't even need to do the application because it's going to cost us more to do the application than it is to, have a greater yield of our crops or, replacing the turf grass totally. And again, that's something that we have to determine with our homeowners. But our control strategy, again, that's basically that chart broken down. Natural controls. Last week we did one on natural pest controls. Last Tuesday night. Can anybody tell me Mother Nature's number one pest control? What it is?
Winter.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a good one. That is a good one. What about in the animal world? What's the best animal that Mother Nature put down here that really helps us as horticulture professionals?
Ladybug.
Ladybug's one. Spiders, the number one natural pest control that Mother Nature gives us. I love that. What's Mother Nature's number one pest control for ticks? Nasty little creatures. We only see them at night. Look like an overgrown rat. Poor things, they get run over all the time. Possums. That's right. One possum can eat up to 5,000 ticks in one summer. So that's a belly full of those bad little bugs. What about mosquitoes?
Bats.
Exactly. And notice all these animals that I'm talking about that's actually doing good for us. We don't like them. People freak out when they see a bat. They don't even like possums. And we definitely don't like spiders. People always killing a spider, but they take out more bad bugs that hurt our garden plants, our landscape plants, than any other creature out there. But here is pesticide resistance. When we're making applications, we're always going to have this one little guy that doesn't get affected. And then he's going to pass his genes on to the next generation. And so we have a few more that are resistant. And then by the third generation, the grandkids here, it is spread through the population, and we only have one individual that is susceptible. So to avoid this resistance, we have to change our pesticides. We have to change our mode of action. We have to come up with different ways to kill the pest. I hate using that word kill, but to actually, terminate it or make the application that's correct. We have to change the stuff up. So what is IPM? First, let's look at the three words separately. We have integrated pest management. And the first word is integrate, to combine two or more things to form or create something. Pest is the animal or insect that causes problems for us, especially damaging our crops. And then management, the act or skill of controlling and making decisions. And that's why I love the actual name of integrated pest management. And I love the term landscape management because it is a skill. We have to make decisions. And a lot of people call it maintenance or whatever, but no, we're actually landscape managers. We're not landscape maintenance people. We're landscape managers. We're managing people's properties, and we make these decisions on how to effectively take care of them. But IPM was initially developed for ag. It provides that process for identifying the pest problems and is designed to determine whether the cost of a particular pest management action is worth the result. That's where that situation comes in. Hey, did I reach the economic injury level? Do I just need to let the bug have the crop or the disease have the crop, because the application is going to cost way more. Treatments are not made according to a predetermined schedule. That's kind of what almost eliminates it from turf grass, because what do we do with our turf grass? We have a 5 or 6 step application calendar that we go by. We always put out 2 applications of pre-emergent fertilizer for our crabgrass. Getting ready to start those hot and heavy, towards the end of February. And then we'll do another one in April. Everything is on a predetermined schedule when it comes to turf grass. But treatments are made when and where monitoring has indicated that a pest will cause unacceptable conditions. Now, where can we actually implement this last statement into turf grass? Treatments made when and where monitoring has indicated the pest will cause these conditions. How can we do that in lawn care? The one way I like doing it, we see a lot of lawn care companies mix everything in one tank. So when they go out at the end of February, they're already putting in their liquid application. They're putting in their liquid herbicide for the pre-emergent for the crabgrass. And then they're putting a broad leaf herbicide in there because there's going to be chickweed, there's going to be henbit and stuff like that in the yards. If it's a new yard, but if they've been on your program for a while, they should be kind of weed free, to be honest with you. But when you mix those 3 herbicides, or fertilizer is not a herbicide, it's still, but it's still an application. We're mixing 3 things all in the tank. And I've asked a lot of people why they do that. And they're like, well, it actually saves us money by only walking over the yard one time. I disagree with that. I do. I want to push my fertility. I do want to push my fertility. I'm not actually applying a pesticide when I'm actually just putting out a granular fertilizer. Now, if I am doing something, barricade or whatever on it, I'm putting out a fertilizer with the pre-emergent. And it's good to do one dry application for your pre-em and then to go back, with the second one for liquid. They need to be mixed up. But if you start adding the post-emergent herbicide for your turf grass in there, you're broadcasting all over the yard when you may not have weeds. So you only make the treatment when you see the weeds. That's why I love pushing my fertility and spraying when I have to for my weeds. I like keeping that backpack on the truck, because if I see a small patch of clover, or if I see a small patch of chickweed in the turf, I can run and get the backpack real quick. I'm not having to broadcast over the entire lawn. That's how we can start saying we are IPM savvy when it comes to turf grass, is getting away from that total broadcast application over the yard. For one, it's illegal. Why is it illegal? You're not supposed to put a herbicide where it's not needed. You're putting down pesticides where it's not needed. So if you have the 99% free, weed-free yard, and you're broadcasting a post-emergent herbicide when you're mixing it with your pre-em and your fertility, you're putting down a pesticide where it is not needed. But unacceptable conditions for properties would be economic damage. This damage directly affects the production of goods. So this would be more so in like a nursery or a greenhouse operation. Medical damage is caused by passing the pathogens to humans and domestic animals. Aesthetic damage is the presence of a plant or animal that causes undesirable change in appearance. And then a nuisance problem, just being around the pest is annoying, like fruit flies, gnats, and things of that nature. But economic damage is easily assessed in ag, forestry, and other related settings. Examples would be termites, garden vegetables being lost, either moths on the clothes, and even Dutch elm disease. But when it comes to seeing this in the garden, a lot of people would freak out and not want to eat it. But why does this not bother me, especially knowing, the pesticide industry? People want to buy that picture perfect plant, right? Or that picture perfect vegetable.
Yeah.
But having these holes in it, what does that tell you about that plant?
It's not
And the pesticide on it.
Exactly. It doesn't have any pesticides. When you cut that up and, mix it up in the garden salad or whatever, you're not going to see that. Not going to see that. That just tells me we're eating pesticide-free or organic vegetables. Termite damage, causes billions of dollars of damage, in the United States a year. Medical damage, pathogens transmitted to the humans and animals just by common wildlife. The bubonic plague was spread like that. Lyme disease. That's why we got to keep those possums around. Malaria. Why are we still having people die of malaria? But it happens every single year. We have the cure for that. We have the vaccine for that. Histoplasmosis, internal fungus infection. That's people working in chicken houses or in the with birds of any kind in those close quarters. And then toxoplasmosis, affliction of the central nervous system, and that's what mothers pass on to the unborn baby while they're pregnant. So they can't change the litter boxes. They get it from the kitty litter, or they get it from meat that actually contaminated meat with it. But with our pathogens, they're transmitted. Here's the bubonic plague. It was in the flea. The flea bites the rat. The flea drinks the rat's blood because the rat is carrying it. Then the flea, it multiplies in their abdomen, and then the flea is going to bite the human. And then those poor individuals, I couldn't imagine living back in those days when medicine wasn't as transmitted. And hopefully, we've about got this COVID thing knocked out with our science and everything that's coming along. But this bubonic stuff was horrible back in the days, but COVID's been horrible for us as well. Lyme disease, again, keep the possums, keep them around, get rid of those ticks. You got Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Lyme disease, bad things. My German Shepherd's got Lyme disease. He's going to have it forever. All we can do is, treat him for it. The malaria, keep the bats around for them. They are passed around. Here's the histoplasmosis. Anytime around chicken farms, it's going to happen. And then your toxoplasmosis, the mother handling the kitty litter, or she's eating contaminated meat, but it's transmitted, to the baby from the infected mother. And, my father-in-law, I was in the Army a lot and going a lot with that. And we always had a little kitten, Meow Meow. And I got a picture of him here in a little bit. He would come over every single night when I was gone with the Army and change a litter box just because he knew about this. And it's something I didn't even think about. And until, I came home and stuff, and they're like, yeah, Papa came over every single night and changed the litter box. But he was doing that because he knew that Sonia was pregnant with Summer a lot while I was gone. What constitutes an undesirable change is highly personal. People just automatically think nature is messy, and it's not. Nature is beautiful. And we mess things up when it comes to it. Like Mother Nature has all these natural pest controls in place. We destroy it as humans. For one, is because we don't understand the natural world, and we've got to sit down and study it. We got to study these bugs. And even ornamental plants are susceptible to attitudes. And we used to take care of a huge property years ago. We had the contract for 18 years, and my parents did. I'm old, but my parents started the business 4 years after I was born. I was born in 1973. Dad went out on his own after working for a nursery for 10 years after college. And, Mom and Dad started their own landscape business, and they had a contract with a large campus property that was 88 acres. And I remember because I was, working there in high school and when I came home on weekends at college and stuff like that. But they got a new director, kind of like the boss of the place. He was a cool guy, but the one thing he hated was dwarf nandinas. And he just hated them with a passion, and he raised the money for us to dig every single one of them out and plant other plants just because he hated nandinas. That poor plant didn't stand a chance if he was in charge. And I thought it was crazy. I mean, I really did. But he did not want to have any Nandinas on campus and found the money. But it's funny what people will do when it comes to that. But a lot of times the aesthetic damage is just the appearance of the pest itself. I mean, these two guys does not bother me. Now, if I see a black widow or if I see a brown recluse, yes, I know we probably need to kill it, especially if it's in the house or close to the house. We're going to get rid of it. But these garden spiders and everything else that's outside, we leave them alone. Box elder bug, not a bad looking dude. I think he's cool. That the state graduate on here, you probably like him, don't you? Got the black and red coat. But people freak out when they see them. And we had a bunch of these box elder bugs hang out on a one of the lantern trees. Shoot, I can't remember botanical name, but the one that has the little lanterns hanging off of it. Golden chain tree. Yeah. Or there's golden rain and then golden chain, ain't it?
Yeah. Probably golden ranger. Yeah.
Yeah. But we
they
had
love those. Yeah.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
But these box elder bugs were hanging out on it. And students were freaking out. They were like, "Oh, we got to get rid of them." They were there for like 2 days maximum. They didn't eat anything. They just they were like, I guess they were resting on their way to somewhere else, but people wanted to spray them and get rid of them. Here though, we want to get rid of these guys. Best thing to do is cut this out and throw it in the fire pit at night. They are going to cause some damage. Aphids, these little bugs. What is the coolest thing about aphids? What do they not need to reproduce? What's the female not need?
Male.
They don't need the male. Exactly. They're clones of the mother. And the cool thing about this, they have determined, they have evolved to where they're always going to reproduce. And these parasitic wasps that people will purchase to release inside of a greenhouse that has an aphid infestation is the coolest thing. You'll actually see a little black pinhole on the side of the aphid. What does that tell us when it's in reference to a parasitic wasp?
That's one that they picked.
It's one they've picked, yeah. And so what does that parasitic wasp do to them?
Injects the larvae in them.
Yes. Awesome. That's kind of a cool way. So what do those little larvae have? They have a warm, they're protected inside the body, but when they hatch, what do they have readily available for them? Food. They'll eat that aphid from the inside out. And then you'll see them fly out of that little black coal that's being created. And so fear of future damage always causes concern. Relief of the fear comes from learning the biology and ecology of the pest. Biggest example would be snakes. People are always scared to death of a snake. But if you learn more about them, that fear kind of goes down. They don't want nothing to do with us, especially black snakes. They are very beneficial to us because they eat the poisonous snakes. And they get rid of those rats. They get rid of those other creatures that may come inside the house. So if you see one, just kind of move it to the edge of the woods. You don't necessarily have to go get the shovel and kill it. Sometimes the damage can be the product of the animal's activity. The problem can be solved by cleaning away the evidence, but leaving the animal alone, except when it is the spider, because I think that is one of the most gorgeous sights you can see. And that is fun to just bring up a lounge chair and watch the bugs fly into it. We actually had a big web across one of the floodlights on the back patio. And I'd let the dogs out at night. And I would sit there and watch all these insects just fly into this web. And then one of those big old green garden spiders, I can't remember the common name of them, whatever, but that dude would run out and he'd zip them all up in the web and he'd store them for lunch a little bit later. One of the coolest things to see. Aesthetic damage coming from all this, the honeydew dripping off the plants and everything. Somebody walking by or running by, not paying attention, can slip and fall. Or if you had a car parked here on the curb, this honeydew can actually, you know, cause big damage to paint. The fear of the insects can make an aesthetic damage a medical, which is, you know, the entomophobia based from entomology. But this fear can be overcome just by studying it and learning what the pests are about. Nuisance problems, groups of animals or plants trying to coexist. The fungus gnats, the sparrows, the squirrels, invasive plants such as seedling trees and exotics. Squirrels, you know, the best way to get rid of them is to have a Labrador retriever, because they are, I swear, I mean, ever since I was raised on collies, and then
Yorkies love squirrels. They never catch them, but they'll bark at them.
My house is surrounded by 3 huge white oaks. No squirrels whatsoever. We have some ducks that live up there, though. We raised some ducks this summer, and they're down on the pond. They'll fly up into the trees and hang out all day, and the dogs are just going berserk down there because they can't get them. But they've cleaned out every squirrel. And so, is it a pest or guest? No animal in itself is a pest. The way each of us feels about the visitor determines whether the animal is welcomed or not, whether it is a pet or a pest. And so, yeah, 2 examples here. We don't want, but you know, my little girls, they love this guy in the fish bowl, fish tank. But if they were to come out and get something to drink in the kitchen at night, and they see something like that run across, I'd probably jump on the kitchen table too. Those little guys are crazy. And here's one. In 1970, the National Park Service, they were called into a golf course community because the rich golf course residents were complaining about getting bit by mosquitoes when they were playing golf. However, they didn't really understand what was going on here. This golf course was on a river. And then the local farmers and some of the lower income residents, they fished this river to supplement their diet. They were, you know, they were upstream a little bit. So the National Park Service, they introduced BT to kill the mosquito larvae. Now the golf course residents are super happy. They're not getting bit anymore. But what happened to the fish?
I've heard of it. Like, it's something to their bones. Yeah.
They packed their suitcases and left. Why did the fish leave?
No mosquito larvae to eat.
Yes, exactly. They were munching on the mosquito larvae, and when they were dead and gone, they didn't have anything to leave. So the fish left, and then people started losing that fish for their diets. The whole thing is you've got to actually study what's going on. There was, when we talked about natural pest controls last week, we were talking about the Modesto ash trees in California. They were being attacked by the ash aphid, or no, not the ash aphid, the California oak moths. The California oak moths were being attacked by this moth, and they were coming and defoliating the entire tree. Now, even though this is California, what did the residents want to do when they saw their trees being defoliated? And they knew it was from this moth. It was from the oak moth. They wanted to either cut down the tree or spray the tree with a pesticide. And usually they're kind of more environmentally friendly. They don't want to do that. But they did not want to see their oak trees get defoliated. But it took a couple of ag agents to sit down and start studying what's going on. These oak moths only came when it was the dry season. And they would entirely defoliate the entire oak tree. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing during the dry season? It turned out to be a good thing because these oak trees weren't losing water through evapotranspiration. They were retaining what water levels they had in them. And when these oak moths came and defoliated, they didn't like just drop the leaves at the ground. They ate the entire leaf. So what do you think they were doing while they were eating the leaf? they were using the restroom and they were having all these droppings at the base of the tree. And when the rains returned, guess what the oak trees had at the base of their tree? They had a natural fertilizer. And so these trees looked the healthiest and the best they've ever looked the following year when the rains returned and they had the new leaves unfold. So that was kind of Mother Nature kind of taking care of them. But people wanted to spray the pesticide or they wanted to cut down the tree. And it took a couple of ag agents really understanding what was going on. And so it is the human social context in which the organisms exist that determines whether the population is pestiferous. It's always the size of the population, not merely the presence of an individual organism, that matters to humans, unless it is that snake. So is our damage tolerable? A few fleas on the family dog. It's always going to happen. We just don't want him bringing it into the house on the carpet. Cockroach in the cabinet or one crawling on the floor. And I don't care what income level we are in, every single household has cockroaches. Guarantee you we could find one. We could pull some walls apart and we'll find one. But what's the problem when we see one running across the floor? It means we got too many. These guys don't like running across that cold tile floor. They want to be in the dark. They want to be underneath the cabinets. They don't like that sunlight. They don't like that cold tile floor. So its total eradication is virtually impossible. It is undesirable. It kills the natural pest enemies. It upsets the broader ecological balance, but it is, warranted with newly invading species. Your toleration without harm to your health or plants of the presence of the pest or pest-related damage. It's a 3-step process. We're going to see how much aesthetic, medical, or economic damage we can tolerate, find out how large the population can grow before the damage, and then the treatment level to keep the pest population small enough not to cause damage. Now, here is the kitty cat I was talking about, Meow Meow, who no longer with us. The dude just disappeared one day years ago, and we could never find him. But he had fleas. And so we turned him into an outside cat. And every now and then he'd like to come inside. But every day, I would comb him. And I would see what the pest population was doing. Was it rising? Was it falling? I was monitoring him. And if he looked clean, because we were treating him for the fleas, and if he didn't have any, and he was clean, we'd let him come inside, hang out with us a little bit, but he'd always want to go back outside. But that monitoring, I was noticing things. I had to be aware of what was going on with him and what was going on outside, because we also had dogs too. So if he had fleas and the dogs are outside, our dogs are outside dogs. If he was getting fleas, I'd have to check them. I'm monitoring what's going on. And so the levels of monitoring, it can be hearsay, casual looking, no record keeping, casual looking, written observation, careful inspection with written observation, then regular written observation and quantitative description. This is where it's going to start, like in the greenhouses, and then quantitative sampling on a regular basis, and then statistically valid quantitative sampling. What we're going to do for turf grass and in landscaping is going to be 3, 4, and 5. We're not going to worry with 1 and 2 because it's just not useful to us. Level 6 is in the greenhouses when using the beneficial insects. When monitoring, you don't have to count the numbers. You can use small, medium, or large infestation, but you must assess the situation at regular intervals and record what you can see. It can be informal. What do you think one of the most valuable monitoring tools you can have is? It's your eyes. You've got to be on site, and you've got to be there. And you've got to notice things in the daytime and the nighttime. Why is that? Different insects, different pests during the daytime and at night. We might think it's something that's going on during the daytime when in all actuality it's something that's happening at night. Now, yes, we're not going to show up at clients' houses in the middle of the night, but we can kind of educate them, a little bit and say, hey, can you check this out, in the late evenings and see what's going on. The difference in hours of activity is one of the most common causes of misidentified pest. We think it's something that's happening during the day. So a little toolkit to keep in the truck when it comes for IPM, a pair of pruners, flashlight, a little hand trowel, some vials to kind of suck the insects in, some pheromone traps, magnifying glass, sticky traps, any of that stuff to kind of help us take some samples if we don't know what's going on. We should know what to look for. To know where to look for the pest, you must know something about its biology and ecology. But to find out more about its biology, we got to know what it is. And so what should we look for? What comes first depends on what you know. If all you see is the pest damage, try to answer these few questions. What's the evidence of damage? Is there presence of natural enemies? Are there relevant human activities that may invite the pest? What are some other potentially contributing activities, and what has the weather and microclimate been like? In timing treatment activities, you often need to consider the life cycles and seasonal variations of both the pest and its natural enemies. And with the flea example earlier, we know that fleas tend to be a problem certain times of the year. Generation time may be shorter or longer than the seasons, and this has a bearing on the treatment schedule. Bagworms before the bags, beetles before the white grubs in the lawn, and then mosquitoes as larvae in the water source. So correct timing is even more crucial in the application of many newer, less toxic commercial pesticides, such as the microbial controls and insect hormones, such as BT, and common names being dipel and caterpillar attack. Treatment should only be applied where the problem is most severe and have the greatest impact. So the fleas are in the bedding and the house, not just the pet. So tactics focusing on the animal are less effective in the long run. We've got to treat the house. You need to leave a small local untreated residue of pests to feed the beneficial enemies, the beneficial pest. If not, they will leave. And then treating only the critical areas is known as a spot treatment in IPM. So that's why I love the backpack sprayer if I have the small patch of weeds. That came from chapter 1 and 3, and then the Gardener's Guide. So, guys, that is the end of the actual slide deck. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? Or it is an hour course, so we've done the 50 minutes of lecture. So I'll get these recorded tonight. As soon as we hang up, I'll go ahead and upload all the license, and you should see it hopefully the end of the week. I don't know if last week's have posted yet or not. I know they're still kind of like on COVID restrictions where, they only have one agent down in the office in Raleigh. So,
Are you planning on doing more of these?
Yeah, I'll do them every Tuesday night at 7:00.
Sweet.
Yep. And then I've got all of January's up, and then in the next day or two, I'll have all of February's up. Same website. Just
You doing them for contractor's license as well on Tuesday?
Yeah, I do irrigation, landscape contractors, and general contractors.
And this one doesn't count for both, just pesticide, right?
On Tuesdays we just do pesticides. But I do with our business vision. I do have a 7-hour course that we travel around teaching, and then I do it online. It'll get you 2 pesticide credits in that class. Yeah, the landscape contractors, they'll only, I think it's either 2 or 3 that they'll accept for landscape credits. It used to be where I could combine irrigation, pesticide, and landscape, but they are
got too simple and they have to change it.
Yeah. If it has anything to do with irrigation, the landscape contractor board will kick it out.
Now they gave a pass on it last year, right? But did they
carries into this year or something like that? Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah, landscape is still, they're requiring them. As far as I know, I mean, as of right now, they still are. I talked to someone yesterday, and they said irrigation may waive them again this year because of COVID. I don't know. But I know the landscape board, they're still in effect for July 31st. So.
Yeah.
Any more questions, comments?
Appreciate it. Have a
Yes,
good
sir.
job.
No, thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right. Hope to see you soon. Thank you,
All right,
guys.
River. Ciao.
Thank
Peace. Bye.